There. So welcome. Another week of talking about family and boundaries and relationships because it's my favorite thing to talk about. And I I don't know. I sometimes I kind of feel into what is being channeled for me and what we should talk about each week. Um, and I'm not sure what's coming up for me. So we're just gonna see where it goes because I want to know what other people are working on, and I can share a little bit more about perhaps part of the journey that I think that people don't quite feel is possible is getting to a place where the relationships that trigger you the most are actually the relationships that you ultimately can be very grateful for. But it's only once you have set boundaries, honored your own boundaries, and gotten to a different status quo with that person. That's the point at which you start to be able to have an appreciation for the relationship when you've taken distance from it. But I'm not a big proponent of cutting people out because the people that you want to cut out are usually the people that have the most to teach you. But it's totally reasonable to take distance from them, and in fact, it's really healthy to take distance from people. I think the place where a lot of people find themselves is this place where you've kind of we all sort of fall into these habits, and especially when you're going from this place of maybe it happens at different times for different people. A lot of times in your 30s, but sometimes it happens for people in their 20s or their 40s. But it's this period of time where you start to recognize that you've acted kind of the same way within your old relationships. Think about your parents or your siblings or extended family. You act the same way with them even into adulthood, and then at some point within your adulthood, you realize that a lot of times you fall back into the same habits as you did when you were a child with them. And I've heard it so many times. People say as a fully grown adult, they say when they get, when they spend more time with their parents, they fall back into their old childlike habits. Habits like just acting kind of like a teenager, getting maybe frustrated with your parents or letting them sort of get to you. And I think that that's a really important place to start self-reflecting from, where you can start recognizing the ways in which you're not taking responsibility for the relationships in your life as an adult. Hey, son, love, good to see you. Yeah, please ask your questions, friends, or feel free to share your boundaries too, so we can talk about it. I think most of the time people have very similar questions when it comes to boundaries and family and conflict and things like that. And your family of origin is an incredible, I mean, I think especially for people on the spiritual journey, if you're in this place where you're learning and growing and you feel like your family is not, that's exactly by design because they're supposed to be on a very different journey than you. Because for your purposes, they're supposed to teach you. They're supposed to teach you that even if you're on a spiritual journey and they're not, that their journey is no less than your journey. Um, Thank you, Heather, for the follow. I think I've had a few follows, so thank you. And please do like and share the live too. And ask your questions. I'm here. I'm open. So, I think that sometimes when you're on the learning journey, even if you've gone to therapy and you start to learn things that other people in your family have not learned, such as boundaries, such as, healthy communication and even learning about your own hurt. Those things are important for you to learn. And there is a process in the healing journey that happens whereby you have to go through the hard feelings of learning about those things, holding perhaps blame, which if you do blame people, in particular your parents, it really just means you still have anger towards them, and that's okay. It's just you got to have a process for feeling that. And then really the journey continues after that. We don't just settle into that anger phase, and we don't just settle into the phase of I'm a victim and I'll always be a victim because my parents did XYZ or didn't do XYZ. Um we too much of the time people settle into the victimhood for too long. And that when I say that, I mean that they settle into the anger. Hi Haley here said never heard this, but this is a wonderful way of putting it. Oh, great, Haley. Do you mind clarifying what exactly is helpful? Because I'm just curious to know what specific part might be helpful for you and maybe expand on that. So, too often people stop in that part of the journey and get stuck there. And if you feel like you're kind of stuck in the anger phase, then it's good for you to listen to this conversation. Um, so this journey is one of it always comes back to the self. It always comes back to the self in that this journey and even the ways that every other person has affected you is about you and your growth and your ascension into a higher version of yourself, which means a more peaceful version of yourself. And you're not going to be able to get to a more peaceful version of yourself by staying in anger. Do you see how that conflicts, how that's actually counterproductive to living in a state of peace is living in a state of anger? And a lot of times we are choosing the anger because it feels really vulnerable to get to the stuff underneath the anger, which is the sadness and the deep, deep hurt. And another thing that we have to do on our journey in order to heal that, a lot of times I talk about, I've talked many times about the actual tool of feeling your anger, and I might talk about that today, but I'm feeling kind of led to speak on a different aspect of this, um, which is that, which is that well, there's a few things that are coming to mind, but I'm going to start with the reality that the people that hurt you, even if they're still alive, no longer exist. Meaning that every single person, and in particular parents, change, grow, and even you are a completely different person than you were a year ago, 6 months ago, and certainly 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so are the people in your lives, different people. They're actually different versions of themselves. And so if what you're experiencing is hurt from childhood, it's important to start to cut the ties with that person. And by that I mean you all might have heard of like cord cutting rituals. Cord cutting is really a really important energetic ritual that you can do, and you can look it up. I'm sure there's many examples on YouTube. But cord cutting is really critical because what it starts to do is break the energetic bond that you have with that person that is based on former versions of both of you. And when you get to a point, and a lot of times it is that you have to get to a point of where you've held enough anger and your body literally can't hold the anger anymore, and you just have to you break down. And this means that you're in a place where your body is telling you that it can no longer hold that story. It can't hold the version of you, and it can't hold the version of that person anymore. And it can't hold the anger, which feels like blame towards that person anymore. And by the way, this is even if this person still has like those triggering habits and does the things that you don't want them to do, doesn't mean they're the same person that hurt you, but your reaction to those triggers you can no longer hold. So it becomes your decision. And as a matter of fact, with every person in my life that has been a part of my healing journey and been somebody who's deeply hurt me, I've done the cord cutting ritual and energetically released both of us. Sometimes multiple times I've had to release the energetic ties between me and another person in my life, a family member. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that in the present, oh, magically everything changes and that person is who you want them to be, but it is releasing the energy of anger and hate out of you. So it's a deep act of self-love when you can release that energy out of yourself. And sometimes and it feels like a death, and it should feel like a death. I remember the first time I did it, I felt so scared that cutting the cord with this person meant that I was cutting them, that they would just no longer be in my life, or that somehow I let them go fully and now they're not in my life. But actually it was the opposite that happened. And this is what happens is because when you get to a certain point in your adulthood, you realize that you can't keep playing the victim anymore with your mother or your father or your sibling or whoever. But in this case, I'll just talk about those familial relationships because oftentimes those are the ones that are the hardest for us. And when we cut the cord with them, what we're actually doing is just releasing yourself, most importantly, and the other person from that energetic bond, from that tension, from that resistance, from that fight, from any hate and any anger. And what I found is that when I go do this process of cord cutting, I oftentimes will for sure cry a lot, a lot, a lot. And also I start to apologize because even though in many ways, especially with parents, like you were a child and so you could look at it like you didn't play a part in it, but there are things that perhaps you could be sorry for, even if the only thing that you have to be sorry for is just contributing to the negative energetic ties, to the conflicting bond. Even if that's the thing that you can take responsibility for, that you contributed angry energy, that's a great thing to apologize for. And when you get to a place where you can actually take ownership of your part of a relationship that you've for years blamed the other person, that's when you know that you're really starting to grow into a version of yourself that is extremely powerful. Because you no longer need to validate the anger by pointing your finger. Because you're aware and you take responsibility of your part, no matter what your part is. And that is true vulnerability with yourself. You don't have to do this to them. That's why energetically is the key here. Oh, thank you, Danny Fed. That's so lovely of you to say. I appreciate that. Okay, let me just see if I think I had other examples. Haley said, great example. My mother is a recovering addict and narcissist. I think my sister and I were angry for a long time. We've both gotten into a place of loving distance. That's great. That's really wonderful. I think that when you do take the necessary distance without, here's the thing, without the energy of like, I'm going to cut them out because they're terrible. Like when people cut people out, sometimes it's with that energy that it's still with that like angry energy. And I don't love that. I think that the highest version of you actually has no judgment towards the people that hurt you. And it doesn't mean that you have to be there yet, but that can be an intention to get there and to be more honest with yourself about what engagement with this person feels good and what doesn't. It could be the most very, very minuscule type of engagement with them, you know? But empowerment isn't like when you're angry at someone, they still have power over you. So when you're engaging with them in like that childlike way that I mentioned earlier, where a lot of people end up growing into adulthood still acting as children with their parents or their siblings. Um, because those are habits that you hold on to, and it's the same. It's like, there's, I forget who it was, it might have been Ram Dass, who said something like, if you think you're enlightened, go spend 2 weeks with your parents. So even very enlightened people really struggle with this. So don't be hard on yourself if this is still something that is hard for you, if you still have some lingering triggers with your family of origin. But my point is that when you grow into adulthood, holding on to those things, holding on to those stories, getting angry at your parents for the things that they do that trigger you, what it actually is telling you, the information that it's giving you, is that there's something that you need to shift. Like, obviously, they're pushing your buttons in some way. And And so what are the ways that you're engaging with them that actually don't feel good for you? Because this is the now what we're starting to get into is the boundaries discussion. Because a boundary doesn't mean that you tell your parents what to do and what not to do around you. That's never going to accomplish anything positive. That's not going to allow you to create healthy relationships. And as a matter of fact, that doesn't actually help you inhabit the right qualities to build healthy relationships outside of your familial relationships. And let me explain that. What I mean by that is that if you start to want to control your parents and tell them you can't do that around me or you need to treat me this way, when what you're actually doing is trying to control how they act around you or with you. That's control. That's you trying to control. And what ends up happening is, first off, you start to monitor. Now you're monitoring how they're behaving, if they're actually doing what you say, what you told them to do. And your level of peace is dependent upon whether they're following your rules or not. You see? And then what happens is you start to think that that's how a healthy relationship should be, that other people in your life, including friends or romantic partners or whoever, need to follow your rules in order for you to be comfortable. And that's not how healthy relationships work. They're not based on control and rules. So this is a lot of times a part of the journey of getting to the place of enlightenment, but it's not one that that can stay in for very long, because what it actually does, what that level of control does, is it keeps you angry. Because even in the same exact way as perhaps you were giving your parents or your siblings too much access to you, and you were being triggered and staying in an angry state, the same way you trying to control them and then your level of peace being dependent on whether they follow your rules means that you also will stay angry when they don't follow your rules. So your level of internal peace is still dependent upon something and someone that is external to you. That is not our goal. The goal is for us to be able to access our internal peace at any time, all time at all times, no matter what anybody else is doing. For those people that trigger you to do the same exact triggering things and for you to stay completely at peace because that is a possibility and that is the journey of enlightenment. So, first of all, it's important to set your intention towards wanting yourself to experience peace. You have to love yourself so dang much that peace, your internal peace is so much bigger. It's more important to you than staying angry and sticking with those old stories. We have to start cutting the cords with these people. Do a cord cutting energetic release. Rip Wheeler's human. When I spiral, I need to regulate myself rather than reach out to people to regulate me. That's great. I think that's a really important thing to know about yourself, and I think that's a really healthy way to be. Steph, you have to have a lot of boundaries today. I don't know what you mean, my dear, but feel free to explain. Hey, Danified. Yeah, welcome. Oh, good, you agree. Okay, awesome, awesome. Exactly, exactly. It's control. Let me know what questions you have, my dears. Each person should freely be themselves while respecting boundaries. Yeah, but this is the thing that I talk so much about because it's not about me respecting your boundaries or you respecting my boundaries. It's about me respecting my boundaries and you respecting your boundaries. Because again, boundaries are promises to yourself, they're not rules for other people. So what that means is that if I'm not trying to control another person's behavior, the only thing that I am in control of is my behavior. So I set the boundaries for myself and I honor my boundaries. Because again, if you are setting boundaries, which requires somebody else to respect them, it means that you are still giving control of your emotional state away to somebody outside of yourself. That is not what we're doing. We are maintaining control of our own emotional state. This is a process, so I'm not saying that it's, easy and like happens like that, but the boundary is if you speak to me that way, I leave. I end the conversation. The boundary is I don't talk to you over the phone. I only text with you. The boundary is I don't answer phone calls after 9 p.m. Not don't call me after 9 p.m. It's I don't accept calls after 9 p.m. Everything I just said has to do with what I do. And so the truth about boundaries is that they never need to be communicated. They never need to be communicated. They can be communicated, and it's really good to communicate boundaries, your promises to yourself, not rules for other people. We're not saying you need to do this. We're saying if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. You can communicate that. But we are not telling other people how to act. We are not making rules for other people and then blaming them when they don't follow our rules because you're setting yourself up for failure if you start setting rules for people because guess what? It doesn't matter how much they love you. It doesn't matter how much they want to show up for you. And again, this is where a lot of romantic relationships can go wrong as well because when you start setting rules for someone, no matter how well-intentioned the rule might be or how reasonable it might sound for you, there's no person on earth, including you, who feels safe in a relationship where there's rules. Think about it. Now, in a healthy relationship, you can have agreements in a romantic partnership. You can say, this is how we show up with each other. This is our promise to ourselves about our relationship. But we're not setting rules for each other. It's not, this is my rule for you. No, 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 no. That is not a healthy relationship. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not a healthy partnership. That's not a healthy anything. That's a you trying to control. So what I really want us to start to get the hang of is, if there's a behavior you're not comfortable with, get real clear on what you're going to do when that behavior happens. And then you can communicate that to the person. And then, because it's a promise to yourself, my promise to myself is every time this person raises their voice at me, I leave. And then the only person responsible for honoring my boundary is me. They can't overstep a boundary because it's not a rule. They cannot not honor my boundaries because it's not for them to honor, it's for me to honor. You see, because what they're really teaching you is how to trust yourself. And when somebody does that same behavior and you honor your boundary and walk away, yeah, you might still feel angry or upset that they didn't do what you wanted them to do. But at the end of the day, you're going to feel really proud of yourself because you walked away, because you didn't engage. And every time you do that, you're going to trust yourself a little bit more. You're going to trust yourself that you will show up when you say you're going to show up for yourself. You're going to trust yourself that you will, no matter what, respect your peace. Because respecting your peace means not engaging in that. Respecting your peace means I'm not going to raise my voice back and get into old arguments with this person. I'm not going to engage in them being triggered, because if somebody's raising their voice at you, it means they're triggered. And then they're raising their voice at you triggers you. So what it really means is that I'm not going to engage with this person when they're triggered and potentially when I'm triggered. Because the goal initially is not that you don't get angry. The goal is simply that I've made this promise to myself and I'm going to honor the promise. And then this is something else. This is a little bit different, but then I'm going to practice my own exercise, my own practice, have my own practice that I do myself to get my anger out. Because if the anger's still there, and it will be there when you're first starting on this, the goal is not to walk away and feel completely at peace. The goal is to walk away, to honor your boundary because you promised yourself you would walk away, and then have a practice to feel your anger and do it yourself. And this is twofold then, right? Now you're learning to trust yourself. You're learning to trust yourself because you're like, oh, whoa, I protected myself. I honored my peace. I respected my boundary. And I can trust myself to do all of those things because now look at, you're actually acting like an adult. I can trust myself to be the adult. I can make a promise to myself and keep it. I can walk away from a behavior that is not healthy, and I don't have to engage with it. And I don't even need them to see or hear or understand me. All that I have to do is honor my promise to myself. And then, see how that builds trust? And then the next thing, I have a practice to feel my anger. So now I see I can trust myself to show up and feel what I need to feel. I'm not going to bury that anger. I'm not going to blow up at anyone. I'm going to have a practice, and then I'm going to respect that anger and respect the practice and actually do the practice, get the anger out, get the energy out of my body so that I get myself back into a state of peace. See, we don't need that person to see, hear, and understand us. We don't need them to know that we're angry, and we don't even need them to hear our perspective. The thing that we were trying to say when we got into this, you know, when they raised their voice at us, right? We don't need them to hear what we're trying to say. in order to get back to a state of peace, because our peace is our own. Nothing outside of us needs to change in order for us to access the state of peace, and that should be your goal. But these are the steps. So do you see how with each step, really what it is and what you're learning in this journey is how to trust yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of self-love. A deep, deep self-love requires that you have a deep, deep self-trust. This is not a journey of trying to change the other person. Do you see? Like, this is so incredible. Wait, do you see how incredible this is? We think the journey is, let me set these boundaries so that this person changes. It's so funny because the universe is going to throw that right back at you. They're going to be like, no, 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 no. That was never the goal to begin with. The goal was always for you to look at yourself, for you to step into your empowered version and know that you can trust yourself to make the promises to yourself and to keep the promises to yourself and to walk away from behavior that isn't serving you. You can trust yourself to make decisions about how you engage with people, the distance that you take with people. You can trust yourself to feel your feelings. You can trust yourself to show up with your inner child. You can trust yourself to give yourself the space and the place to go to those depths that need to be seen, heard, and understood, because you don't need to rely on them or anyone to see, hear, and understand you. You can see, hear, and understand yourself. You can trust yourself to do all of these things. And that person that triggers you probably the most out of anybody is your greatest teacher for teaching you how to be that powerful. And guess what? When you learn that you can trust yourself so deeply that actually you are the person that you can and will always trust the most in life, imagine how powerful that makes you. Imagine what you can accomplish when you are standing in that level of empowerment. You can accomplish anything. You could live your purpose. You could live an incredibly joyful life, an incredibly exciting life, and yes, a peaceful one. But you've got to learn the skills, and this is what this journey is teaching you to do. Okay, Tula Faye said, I'm probably behind on comments here, my dears, but I'll just go through them now. Okay, but if my boundary is no photos of me, does that mean I isolate myself from everyone because of one person? So first of all, Tula, my dear, that is not a boundary. That's a rule. See? You're saying don't take photos of me. It's not anybody's responsibility to not take photos of you. It's your responsibility to get out of the photo or to say, I'm not going to be in the photo. I'd like to not be in the photo. It's and I don't mean this personally because I've been there in that stage, and I think a lot of people go to that stage, but go through that stage of like trying to make rules for people, but it's crazy to me that we think that it's other people's responsibility to honor what's true for us. It's not anybody else's responsibility to honor what's true for you but you. It's not. It's nobody's responsibility to honor that desire of yours to not have photos taken of you. And also, I would really encourage you, because I've actually been through something similar, and I would really encourage you to consider why that's so important for you, that you are not in photos, because that could be some sort of uh little tricky way for your control to have a say in what's happening around you. And again, I say that from my own experience because I think that little like need to control kind of pops up. Like, what do you think is going to happen if somebody takes a photo of you? What are you scared of happening if somebody takes a photo of you? Like, really nothing's going to happen. So what are you trying to control? Because that's what it is, control. And usually what happens when we try to control little things like that is it's because we feel like it's because we feel like we have a lack of control in some of the bigger areas. So I would try to shift your focus to the real like the real things that you feel like you don't have control over. The relationships, the situations. Jason said, faithfulness is my boundary, so break that. I promise to leave. Okay. That's, I don't know if that's really a boundary though, my dear. I think that's like, oh, what's the word? I think that's like oh, I can't think of the word right now. But it's kind of like your, almost like your preference. I can't think of the word right now. It'll come to me. But I like that you focus on what you're gonna do. I had a stranger from my neighborhood ask me where I'm from, what I do for work, etc. Weirdo. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure how that relates, but you obviously don't have to give information to anyone you don't feel comfortable giving it to. I just feel so powerless because my only choice is to leave or disengage. That's actually not your only choice. I'm a Savannah cat. Oh, I love Savannah cats. Okay. Feels limited, not powerful. Um, Example, I will not give when I don't feel cared for, but that's a boundary or controlling. That's just too general. Boundaries are really specific. Boundaries are really specific to a person. I mean, they can be general, like you could say if anybody raises their voice at me, I leave. But typically, because there's specific people that tend to trigger us the most, they're going to be person specific. Or at least they start off person specific and then they can kind of venture out from there to the grander masses. But saying I will not give when I don't feel cared for is way too general. It's way too general. That because what does that even mean? Like nobody except you knows what that means for you. So you can't just like have that as a boundary when like nobody, like I can't even, I could never decipher what that even means, what that would even mean. I don't know what it means to care to that you don't feel cared for. Like what if I don't, you have to be specific. It has to be specifically something that another human being could understand. This is a specific thing that to do or not to do, right? Like, but anyways, that still is not a boundary. That's about control because you're still kind of like in this place where you're like tit for tat, tit for tat. Like healthy relationships are not like tit for tat. You know, it's not like, well, they're not giving, so I'm not going to give. No. But what it does mean, because I'm betting you're thinking about somebody specific when you say that. And so thinking about that particular relationship, like what do they do? How are they not showing up for you or whatever? What are they doing that doesn't feel quite right for you? And how are you like what's your responsibility in it? Right? I think what is helpful is like when you have a certain expectation of somebody else and they're not living up to that expectation, it's actually not the other person's problem. It's your problem because you have a certain expectation that they should show up in a certain way. It's that whole should, you know, that they should be doing this, they should be doing that. If they loved me, they would do this. If they loved me, if they really cared about me, if they really wanted this relationship, they would be doing XYZ. Well, that's your own story and beliefs. So there's probably a way in which you're actually not honoring what's true for you, and that you need to set your own boundaries for yourself, your own promises to yourself about perhaps creating some more distance. Oh my gosh, sunset. Hey, yeah. Thank you for noticing that. Oh, okay. Awesome. So yeah, all of my lives, or most of them, I try to record most of them, that they are available on YouTube. So that link is in my link tree now, and you can review the lives. Oh, hey, free spirit love. Thank you for being here and thank you for that feedback. Yeah, I agree. Many don't understand that boundaries are for yourself. And I think it's causing a lot of people to really have a lot of suffering. So that's, why I'm here to help us not suffer so much. New to this live, does she read comment? Yes, I'm reading now. I just kind of get on my monologue and then I get behind. One of my boundaries, for example, is refusing to ride with people who drink and drive. Yeah, that's good. Another boundary is to refuse to be around someone yelling, I will leave. Exactly. Yeah, see, you will leave. But again, we don't need to like use that language if I refuse to. That kind of comes with, I guess you can self-reflect on that yourself. For me, I kind of interpret like I refuse to be around. It's kind of like on your high horse, like judgy McJudger about the situation, like, well, I refuse to be around this. It's more just like, you know, it's just not like I'm just not going to be around that energy. So just I guess it's more my point is just to like check in with what energy you're speaking from because obviously it's in writing I can't tell, but if you honor your boundary and walk away from the behavior and you get the anger out on your own, then what? Then you're free, and then from that place of peace you figure out what to do. And by the way, you're never going to make the best decision when you try to make a decision about what to do when you're angry. The only way you're going to make like a really aligned decision with yourself is if you get yourself back to a stable state, if you get yourself back to a state of peace. That's when you're actually going to be able to make a decision about what to do. And what I mean by that is like maybe you like think that now you need to go talk to that person and tell them that they upset you, or that you have to have an open conversation. It's very likely that somebody that's already raising their voice at you that you've probably told in the past not to, and that's why now you're walking away because they don't know how to do that. It's very likely that that person isn't going to be the one to see, hear, and understand you anyway. So it's not really going to be very fruitful to try to have a conversation with them, most likely. But the whole point that I'm making is that you get to learn the skills of feeling your feelings yourself. And those things you can find on my YouTube channel. I've talked about this in so many lives. I'm probably not going to do it today, but the actual practices of feeling your feelings, there's actual practices, and they take a lot shorter time than you might think. When you say like, then what? Well, then what? Because if you've gotten yourself back into a state of peace, the only thing to do is to figure out, well, much of the time, once you're back to a state of peace, there's nothing else to do. You've gotten yourself back to a state of peace. You might still be like disappointed in that person. And I think that's the point where you then decide, well, maybe there's actually another boundary that I need to set. And by the way, boundaries do create space and distance within a relationship. So it might be, for example, like maybe with this particular relationship, you've said like, okay, well, I'm not going to have emotional conversations with this person because you don't want because you're not going to get into like a yelling match with them, right? Like we're not going to argue, or it's just going to be surface level. And then perhaps hold on a second. And then perhaps for whatever reason something comes up and they end up yelling at you again, and then you get really mad because you're like, "Oh, I made this promise to myself that we wouldn't have emotional conversations," and then it still happened. And then so you get your anger out, right? Which by the way, anger is just a mask for like hurt. So really what you're doing after you're getting your anger out or during getting your anger out you come to terms and you actually feel the deep hurt and the sadness and the disappointment and fear. Sometimes fear is below anger as well. So once we get to those feelings, those feelings, like anger's like a oh, anger's like a big, powerful, like it feels like it's a very active emotion. Once you felt the anger, you're gonna get to a place where your body has now your body kind of falls, your whole body falls, the resistance, the tension falls, and now you're just like, dang, I'm just really sad. I'm just really sad because I feel like I'm trying so hard to like make decisions that feel good for me. And I'm just so sad because this person can't see me and can't hear me and can't understand me. And they still do the things that I ask them not to do. And once you got into that place, you're doing real good. Once you've let that tension out of your body, you're doing really, really good. Once you can acknowledge what's really true, which the anger is not a root emotion. Anger is a cover-up emotion. It's a secondary emotion that we default to because it feels powerful. But what's under the anger is hurt and sadness, fear, disappointment. I'm just really disappointed in this person. And then from there, you can say, well, I guess it might be necessary for me to like take some more access away, some additional access to myself away from this person, which means making a new promise to myself, setting a new boundary, which might be, well, now they've demonstrated that they can't even have regular conversations with me without raising their voice. So now I'm just going to say like hi and bye and keep it real minimal. And by the way, these change. Like you're going to realize too over time, like once you do take access back from people and you start to feel more powerful in your life, over time, people can earn access back. But they're earning access back because mostly because like the energy that you're giving is different because once you're further along in your healing journey, you get to a place where you don't actually need them to change. And also like they're changing and they're on their own journey and hopefully you're both on a journey where at some point you can just accept who each other are, and it doesn't mean accepting that they yell at you, no, but what it actually ends up looking like in a lot of cases is that you can accept who each other are to the extent that you don't need to engage in those old triggering behaviors. But oftentimes it's you leading the way. You have to lead the way, be the leader, stop engaging with the triggering behaviors. Because your piece is your responsibility, it's not theirs. You've grown in maturity and kept a promise to yourself, thus nourishing your self-trust. Exactly, Tula Faye. Thank you for that. Thank you for the heart. Please like and share the live, my dears. Tula Faye, so my example was I said I don't want to be in a photo and they still took a photo of me and shared. Yes, I knew that. It's not little when someone disregards them, I know. Yeah, but my dear, my point is that you can't control that. People are always going to do something that isn't in line with what you want. So you can say something to them. Like, here's the thing. Here's the thing, my dears. You bringing that up tells me you're angry about it. So focus on how to get the anger out of you and then figure out what to do, because right now just the fact that you're bringing that example up means you're not over it. And again, what's behind the anger is hurt. So the like fix, if we're trying, like our human brains always want to like fix things, right? We're like, how do we fix this? The fix is not, what do I do about this person that disrespected my boundary? Because again, they can't disrespect your boundary. Nobody can disrespect your boundary except you. But we think, well, this person, whatever you said, which was something like they disregarded my no. Yeah, that's going to happen all the time. That's literally life. People are going to disregard your no. It doesn't matter. What matters is first, how you feel about that. That's your responsibility. Secondly, that you don't disrespect your no. Only two things that matter because they're the only two things that you can control. So you have to feel your anger, feel your feelings about how that felt so that you don't keep holding on to the story. And the story you're telling yourself right now is that they disregarded your no, that they disrespected you. That means that you're angry, my dear. And it's your responsibility to feel the anger, to feel the hurt underneath the anger, to get to a place of back to a place of peace. And then decide if there's something you want to do. Maybe you want to say something to this person. But here's the thing, so often we decide, oh, I'm going to say something to them because they disrespected me or they overstepped my boundary. So I'm going to say something to them. But often we decide to do that while we're still in the anger phase. And then those conversations never go well. Let me say this. Never has a conversation ever gone well when you've gone into it from a place of anger. So again, your goal should be to get yourself back to a state of peace, because then when you're there and you've actually felt and seen and validated your own feelings, then you can, if you decide, first of all, a lot of times once you get to that place, you're going to be like, it's not worth it. Like, I don't want, it just doesn't feel necessary anymore. Because really what you wanted was to feel seen, heard, and understood. But once you've seen, heard, and understood yourself, you don't need them to see, hear, and understand you. Secondly, sometimes when you get to that place of peace and then you decide, like, you know what, I do still kind of want to say something. But you can, so go ahead and say something. But again, we're not trying to control the other person. And you should also, like, here's the thing, also when you're going into a conversation like that, you need to be open to the other person's perspective. Like they might not have like meant, most people don't mean to like do stuff to hurt you. Like people aren't out to get you. So it's like, but going into that with the energy of like anger and blame is not, that's not going to solve anything. That's like really going to make everything worse. So going into it with this energy of just being like, I think I would just like to tell them that that I felt kind of hurt by it. Um, but really understand what your goal, like, what is your goal? Like, what do you, are you just trying to like get them to hear you? Are you just trying to, like, what are you trying to do, I guess? Because for me, like, I'm thinking about this example, it's like, it still feels control-y. It still feels like, yeah, but like, you know, um, like, do you just not want pictures of you taken? Do you not want pictures of taken of you and then shared? Like, what is it specifically? And like, why? Because again, it sounds to me like you're trying to control these things. And I just wonder whether it's more about the control than actually the picture. Okay, so now I'm like really behind. Okay, hi, new here, and I'm hanging around to hear something helpful. My therapist has told me that this is schmeggles. I just don't know how to go about setting them up. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful. Schmeagles? I don't know how to say that. Difficult to be specific with limited characters in each chat. No worries, I totally understand. I don't want to over explain when things make me uncomfortable. Okay, that's good then. Okay, that's good information to have. Boundaries can be person specific, and yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, good. I'm glad that makes sense. Yeah, as the person who gets If you loved me, you just start talking. I can firmly say just because they don't do X doesn't mean they don't love you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, problem is people have different personalities and show love differently. Exactly, my dears. Oh, you all are just so freaking smart. You really get it. I'm struggling from CPTSD, and my partner says that to me also, but knowing now that it's much deeper. Yeah, and like what I'm talking about mainly has to do with family relationships. Partnerships are very different because I don't think you should really necessarily have strict boundaries in a healthy partnership. Although I think sometimes you can have boundaries. And then again, like I said, as you build trust with yourself, each person builds trust with themselves. You also build trust with the other person. You can build more goodwill. And, I think over time, sometimes there are partnerships that our soul signs up for in order to learn these lessons. Sometimes it's through those relationships, and then gradually we can um, create a new relationship based on more authenticity. But I don't think in a healthy relationship it's like necessary to have super strict rules a lot of the times. It's so wild that there are so many people who just don't understand that love isn't one size fits all. Exactly, Schmeggles. I agree with you, my dear. Miss Cartographer. Ooh, cartography. That sounds interesting. Thank you for the comments and the follows. Okay, I'm trying to catch up, my dears. Let me clarify. I removed myself from people yelling because I lived with a man who would yell at me hours. Yeah, that's totally fair to remove yourself. I love this discussion. This stuff needs to be said. Oh, you're so welcome, my dear. Thank you for being here. Opposite gender, friendship boundary, or insecurity. Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know, because that's kind of a general thing to say. Like, are you saying my partner cannot have opposite gender friends, and that's a rule and that's unhealthy? My adult daughter who lives with us has bipolar. I am constantly struggling. That probably means that you need to set some boundaries for yourself and take some distance for yourself. If she's an adult, then she can and should be at least to some degree taking care of herself. It's not your responsibility to take care of her emotionally. Um, so, you can try to be there for her, but if it's taking a toll on you, then you might need to set some of your own promises to yourself, some of your own boundaries and how you engage with her. And now I get extremely high anxiety being around people who yell panic attacks. Okay, so that is a really good thing for you to work on, accessing your peace in that type of scenario. I suggest perhaps doing some visualization exercises, imagining yourself in a bubble of safety where when somebody around you is yelling, you are visualizing yourself completely safe and at peace. Because the goal in the long term, my dear, is that nothing outside of you can impact your internal experience. So, have a lot of compassion for yourself too in the journey. I mean, this is a journey of compassion. The whole feeling your feelings is compassion. That's you having deep, deep compassion for yourself. So it's kind of a balancing act of validating and then challenging ourselves. Okay, right. So this is actually really important. I'm going to try to not to get onto another soapbox before I get through all the chat. But I think this is really important because so often especially with therapy, like a lot of us that have done therapy is all about validation. Therapy is all like validate, validate, validate. And sometimes I think that, you know, depending on your therapist or depending on your experience, they don't always, a lot of times they do, but sometimes they don't challenge you enough in the ways that you need to be challenged. And actually, I would say just for sure, therapy is a part of the journey and is a lot for a lot of people the introduction into like this self-help or self-development kind of journey, spiritual awakening process. But then that's why I think for sure like some other type of coaching or spiritual guide is necessary because therapy oftentimes only brings you so far to where everything you experience is validated, but it doesn't always allow you to challenge some of those things, some of those experiences, and to build new skills to overcome some of your experiences of your life so that you feel empowered no matter what situation arises. So, um, they might validate the experience of, being really scared when somebody yells, and that's important. That helps you build your own self-compassion and validation practice, but you should have your own validation practice. That's a lot of, you can find that in many of my YouTube lives. I post on YouTube a lot of my lives, and many of them have that feeling of feelings practice. Um, so, but we have to go further than that. We have to go further than the validation, which is we have to build energetic skills to get to a place of peace, no matter what's going on around us. And that actually takes that is where you step into the spiritual energetic realm, because you can't do it without being able to navigate your energy field. You're not going to be able to get to that place of peace. So it's starting to learn the skills of navigating, controlling your energy field, the energy field around you, um and so that anything external to you just can't get through your energy field. That's something maybe for a different day. But and that might not be like the place to start from right now, but that's the intention. I think most people don't even realize that you can be in a state of peace like 100% of the time. I mean, I say 100%. It doesn't mean that you don't like dip down, get upset, but then the point is that you have the tools to get yourself back up real quick, real quick. Yeah, I'm going through that right now. The issues I have most is that we both struggle from traumatized childhoods. Yes, you both have your own work to do. I know he has problems, has got to work on, and I don't walk away. But now that I am working on me, I don't know where the rest of that comment was. But yeah, I think what's challenging in a romantic relationship, when you come together at a place where you're both unhealed and then you're on your healing journeys, or you're becoming your new version of yourself journeys, like you both have to be committed to it for yourself. Otherwise, it's going to get to a place where if one person's growing and changing and the other person's clearly not committed to that for whatever reason, it's just not the time on their own journey, it's not going to work. Like there's going to be a tension there. But if both people are committed to their journeys and committed to growing with each other on this journey, it definitely can work. I already answered that question about the gender. How do you stop wanting validation outside of yourself? Oh, hey, gorgeous hearted. You give it to yourself. You give it to yourself. 1,000% you give it to yourself. And gorgeous hearted, go, yeah, purple, hey, purple hearts, yeah, honor how you feel. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's the practice that I teach so often that, again, I have the link to my YouTube channel, which I'm posting these lives on, and that practice is in a number of videos. So go find that practice and you'll learn. That's exactly how you stop looking for validation outside of yourself, is by giving the validation of your feelings to yourself. You have to be understanding with the other person. No. Hey, okay, so nobody. This is a good question. Oh, I think this is what you're asking. Like, don't you have to be understanding with the other person? No, you don't at first. So always, 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 until you get really, really good at it. Then you can get to a place where you actually can hold your experience and theirs, and like navigate those simultaneously. But no, at the beginning and for a long time, for like years, I would say, as you're practicing these skills, number one goal every single time is to show up for yourself first. Yourself. You come first. If there's something that happens, no, you don't have to be understanding about the other person. You simply walk away from the situation, because what we don't want to do is engage in the old toxic ways, right? Like we're not engaging our energy in that. We Even if you feel like you're going to cry or something, like take that with yourself. Take that within yourself, walk away. Again, I teach the practices. Go on my YouTube and watch some of the lives. You'll get and I'm not going to do it tonight, but I'm on every week and I do the practice a lot. I do these practices. I share these practices a lot. There's only a few practices that you really need. So, then go away, do your practice, feel your feelings, get your feelings out, validate your feelings, feel seen, heard, and understood yourself. Once you get to that place, you can get to a place where you're back to a place of peace. You've seen, heard, and understand yourself, and then you can actually go back to the other person and go, and you're gonna engage in that conversation in a from a much different energy. You're not going to be going into that conversation needing them to feel seen, heard, and understood, or from like a people pleasing energy of just like, well, now I just have to hear their perspective. You're gonna go into it from a much more stable place where you're like, you can share how you felt, what you experienced, and you can hear what they experienced. This is maturity. This is emotional regulation. This is healthy relationship. You come first. In a healthy relationship, you come first. For yourself, you come first. I come first for me. And if they want to talk about things and I'm not ready to, I'm going to say I need some more time. But I'm not just going to I'm not going to like suppress it and like go and try to like busy myself or distract myself. I'm going to say I'm going to take some time and go feel my feelings and I'm going to do my practices because I have practices. And once I'm done with that, and once I've taken a little bit of like breather time, then I'm going to come back and we can have a conversation. No, you do not have to understand the other person initially. Mm, I don't know what's yeah, I do a free spirit. I do agree with that. That's kind of like what we look for in therapy, is validation. That's like a big part of what therapists offer is validation. So yeah, everybody does. You do need some level of external validation. Everybody does. But you have to be able to validate yourself because you're always going to have access to yourself. Um, you're not always going to have access to a therapist or a coach or spiritual healer or whatever. So make sure you have the skill yourself. Yeah, and I would not recommend talking to friends and family because they're biased, and make sure that if you're going that route, I would say, I mean, it doesn't help. It doesn't help talking to family and friends. I just don't think. Really don't think it does. I think that oftentimes that comes with a lot of bias and a lot of judgment, unintentional judgment from other people, unintentional opinions being passed to you about how you should feel, or maybe they are just trying to validate you without challenging you. And that just doesn't like, maybe they're like, yeah, he sucks. Why did he say that? That was terrible. But it's like sometimes you need to hear, like, yeah, but like what you said wasn't great either, or like, here's the other thing. Okay, this is also really important. We're really touching on some good stuff tonight. When you talk to family and friends, a lot of times, like their whole goal, because we think connection is like, um, sometimes, okay, two things. Sometimes we think that gossip is connection, and it's not. And sometimes, like when we go into something like well intentioned, trying to just like vent or tell somebody something about like let's say our significant other. No, you should never. Here's the other thing about a healthy romantic relationship. You're never, ever, ever telling anybody else, any other human being, your problems or your feelings about your romantic relationship if you haven't already talked to your partner about that. And then you probably won't even feel the need. The only people you should be talking about that with are like therapists, coaches, healers. Never should you be going to your friends and telling them, like, oh, he did this or she did that. No, no, we're not in high school. if you're not talking to your partner about the problems or like working on them, like just you could keep it vague, like we're working on something XYZ, but like don't share, stop sharing so much. Stop sharing so much. We don't need to do that. It's not healthy, you guys. Schmeagles. Okay. Isn't that Shmee? Isn't that like the Captain Hook's little pirate helper, Shmee? I don't know if that's related at all. For me, my mom always posts the worst pics of me. She still posts the ones she likes, even if I said no. But like, why do you care what she posts though? Like, why do you care if they are the worst? Like, that speaks to me that there's an insecurity that you have. And then otherwise, just like don't be in the photos with that, like that your mom's taking, like, but then that just takes so much, like, I'm just thinking about being at like a family party or something, and if your mom is taking photos and you're kind of trying to dodge the photos because again you can't control her. You can't say, mom, don't take photos, and you can say, don't take photos of me, but like it's just like a lot of control, like, and if your big argument is that she posts the worst pictures of you, like why do you care what you look like? It's hard to tell your partner how to be, and like, to be honest, I don't think I need the boundaries. Yeah. How do you know if a boundary is from a trauma response? I think if you're trying, a boundary is not from a trauma response if you're doing it right. I think what you're referring to um would be like if you're trying to set rules, which is what I'm saying it's not. So if you're trying to set rules for people, then it's a trauma response. If you're trying to control, it's a trauma response. It's just what the next step my therapist decided. Keep in mind we've met 2 times now. Sorry, your comments are kind of like, I'm just like reading them between other comments. So your therapist decided that boundaries is the next step. Is that what you're saying? The new therapist said that she really doesn't think it's bipolar at all, and so I just asked for an entire new psych eval. Not to go against her, I just need to know what I'm working with. Yeah, that's fair. Checking. Yeah, but yeah, I'm glad you're gonna check that out later, my dear. I think that finding the feeling of feelings practice is gonna be really helpful for you. And also, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say something. Oh, I was gonna say something earlier that was really important too, about when you talk to family and friends. Here it is. Okay. The other problem with talking to family and friends is that a lot of times we do this type of thing. So your friend says, I'm just like so disappointed. I'm like so upset with myself that I said this thing or that I did this thing, right? Like I'm so like mad at myself for this. I'm so like upset with I'm and you a lot of times like our response is like habitually, like we're taught to do this. Habitually it's like, "Oh yeah, but like, it's kind of understandable that you said that or that you did that. Like of course you did that because, like it's whatever, like whatever we say like, well, I'm sure, you did your best, or I'm sure it's not as bad as you think, or maybe you could do XYZ to try to fix it, or like we go right to either like trying to minimize it, like, oh, it's probably fine, or like, yeah, but like you didn't know any better, you did your best, or like we try, like or we try to go to fix it, like unintentionally, we're just trying to like fix the feeling, which the feeling they usually don't even say. The feeling is actually that they're really disappointed in themselves. And so friends and family are just like not really that helpful because oftentimes they're going to try to talk you out of how you actually feel. They're going to try to talk you out of feeling the disappointment in yourself. And that's so unhelpful because, yeah, of course you're disappointed in yourself. What you really want, what we don't know that we want, like sometimes our ego wants to hear, yeah, but like it's not that big of a deal, or you did your best or whatever, or, we want to, like, our ego wants to hear somebody tell us that we did the right thing or that we did okay, that it's not that bad. But like really our soul wants to hear like wants the validation of the feeling. And the feeling is that I'm really disappointed in myself. And the feeling is that, like, yeah, of course I am. Because the feeling is not going to pass if you just try to explain it away or fix it. The feeling of disappointment, like what your soul actually, your inner child really wants you to do is be like, yeah, that sucks. That, of course I'm disappointed because I didn't like live up to my own expectations. I didn't act in a way that is like the person that I want to be. And like I said, this thing out of maybe being an emotional state or something. And so of course I feel disappointed. We don't realize it, but we really want validation of the emotion. We don't want somebody to tell us that we don't have to feel that way because it's fine or that it's not that bad. We want to hear that it's okay to be disappointed in ourselves, that it's not only okay, but that like, of course we are. There's no other way we should possibly feel. Because actually what is hard is the feeling, because here's the thing. Okay, we can only be like preoccupied with something that's currently happening. So if the situation already passed, it's not the situation that's impacting us right now, it's the emotion right now. The situation already happened, it can't possibly affect you. What's happening, what's impacting you now is how you feel about what happened. So we don't need to like fix what happened. What we actually need to do is acknowledge, feel, and validate the feeling because that's what's actually impacting you in the present moment. And it won't pass until you feel and validate it. It's about what you're gonna do happens, not rules for others. Exactly, Tracy, you got it. I get this generally, but I would like to see you have peace with being yelled at, belittled for hours. Um, but I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying, my dear. I'm saying like if you're being belittled for hours, like why are you allowing yourself in that type of space? Like why aren't you making promises to yourself that would allow you to experience something different? I'm not saying that you get to a place of peace and then you endure like whatever kind of behavior. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you make set boundaries, make promises to yourself that create an experience of your life that feels really positive and empowering. And then even if something triggering happens around you, you're not triggered. But that's only after you've done probably years and years of work on yourself to get there. So you should not be being yelled at for hours. If you are, then you're not choosing the right spaces and situations. I'm really concerned because that's us. He refuses to work on his mental health till his physical health is worked on first. He says things like, "What's it matter how I feel if I have a tumor?" And that, ooh, yeah, that's concerning. Better not to be the right butter might. Maybe resentments is better. Yeah, I think the most important thing for you right now, like you're focusing a lot on what he's doing and what he's saying. Turn that back to yourself. And like I said, check out some of the feeling of feelings practice that I have available. There's not too many videos up, and it's probably like in 3 of those videos or something that practice is there. But I would say, like focus on how you feel about what he's saying, because that's what's true for you. We don't actually know at this point where the relationship is going or not going. I'm sure that you have fears about that. And that's another thing that's your responsibility to feel. So I know it's really hard, but right now, because this is what makes or breaks a relationship, you are going to continue to center yourself. And this is what I'm talking about. This whole time, what I've been talking about is centering yourself. In order to get to the empowered state and the enlightened state, we have to center ourselves. So, in order for you to center yourself, it's time for you to focus on how you feel about what's happening, how you feel, the fear you feel about the future of your relationship, validating that, on the resentment that you feel about how your significant other is acting or what they're saying, and validate that. Like, turn it back to yourself. That's all you can do. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. That's all you can do, and that's, in the long run, what's going to make sure that you're gonna be okay no matter what happens. Free spirit. Actually, actually, both people are being heard and understood because you're being heard and understood by yourself. Schmeagles, we gotta, okay, my dear. I think this is often happens, like, where we get so preoccupied and anxious about what's going to happen. We get, like, scared about whether the relationship is gonna continue, whether it's gonna end, what we're gonna do, blah, blah, blah. You're not, it doesn't sound to me like you're there yet to even be making that decision. So focus on what's happening now, which is the feelings, and validate the fear of that future scenario, like, and you should journal about it too. I think journaling is a great way to get a lot of this out. But you don't have to answer those questions now, even though I'm sure that you feel the fear and anxiety of those questions. Oh, good chunk of change. What I said was perfectly clear and easy to understand. I'm so glad to hear that. Oh my gosh, I finally got through all of the comments. Thank you, my dears, for all your comments. I'm gonna leave it there for tonight. Oh, let's see. I feel my partner is clingy and controlling. Whenever I tell him, he gets defensive and passive aggressive. Yeah, that's not a great response from a partner, obviously. And to be honest, it kind of reminds me of the situation that where we were just talking about, where you're maybe growing and your partner is not. Oh, you're so welcome, Schmeagles. Okay, yep. All right, my dear. Um, yeah, Emily, feel your feelings about it. Check out my YouTube, which is linked in my profile, and then there's a lot of practices on there for feeling your feelings within the lives that I've shared. I'll probably share this live too. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that, Schmeagles. Yeah, you have a great night too, my dear, and I'm gonna sign off as well. Emily, go ahead and check out my YouTube. I'll be back on, usually I'm on Tuesday evenings. This week it was Thursday. So thank you for anybody that wasn't expecting me to be on Tuesday. I was on Thursday and here we are. So I appreciate your understanding on that. But I'll be back on this coming Tuesday, and I'm sending you so much love and so much light. Thank you for all of your engagement and your follows. I'm super glad to have you all on this journey and to be a part of your journey. And I love you so much. I'm sending you so much love and light, and I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.